Welcome into another edition of Who's Number One. I'm Trey Wingo. You know, when players start whining about the difficult setups on a U.S. Open golf course, generally they accuse the U.S. Golf Association of deliberately trying to embarrass them. To which the USGA haughtily replies, "Our intent is not to embarrass the best players, it is merely to identify them." In other words, shut up and play. Keeping that definition in mind, let's identify the 20 best men's U.S. Opens of all time.
2020.
Who could forget Ed Fergal at Baltusrol?
The great Ed Fergal. Who is Ed Fergal? That's what they were asking then, because 54, this was the coming of age to the U.S. Open, because it was the first one that was televised.
Slammin' Sammy Snead was there along with Ben Hogan, but they were all chasing 37-year-old Ed Fergal, whose left elbow was bent and withered from a childhood accident.
The thing about Ed Fergal is that he couldn't straighten his left arm.
It's important to keep the left arm straight through the backswing, but you know, the important thing is making contact, and Ed Fergal made great contact that week.
A gallery of almost 40,000 saw Fergal's 4-over par 284 edge out Gene Littler, who missed an 8-foot putt to tie on the final hole.
Golf said, look at us, and here's their poster boy, Ed Fergal.
1930, Interlochen Country Club, Minneapolis.
Bobby Jones had already won the British Open and the British Amateur, and he was shooting to try and become the first person to ever win the Grand Slam.
In the golden age of sport, Jones was the biggest sports celebrity in America, even bigger at one point than Babe Ruth.
Accorded a ticker-tape parade for winning the 2 major British championships, Bobby Jones struggled to live up to his reputation and to expectations.
The closer he got to the Grand Slam, the more pressure there was on him. He didn't eat very much. He would have sleepless nights. He would lose tremendous amounts of weight on the golf course.
They're short or long, he don't care. He wants to make every one of them. Some more, buddy.
Jones' 5-stroke lead had shrunk to 1 by the final hole, where he faced a long and daunting putt.
40 feet up the slope. You know, the tournament was still in balance. The issue was still in doubt. And he makes this putt, and people go crazy, and he just walked up and got it out of the hole. I mean, extremely cool.
He'd only play one more tournament. He wins the U.S. Open at Interlochen and then goes on to win the U.S. Amateur and hangs it up at 28. He retires at 28.
The magic of 1930 and Bobby Jones, I think, is told in the inability of any golfer since to be able to put together a Grand Slam.
1987, Olympic Club, San Francisco.
Was a great battle coming down the final 9 holes. Scott Simpson was battling Tom Watson, a proven major champion winner.
It wasn't a guy faltering like it is so often. Watson and Simpson were just going mano a mano back and forth.
There was leaderboard gridlock early in the final round with 9 players bunched within 1 shot. But by the 13th, all save Tom Watson and Scott Simpson had fallen away.
Scott Simpson was one of those players who just quietly lurked around the leaderboard, didn't have a lot of flash.
And the plot thickens even more.
Scott Simpson came in and didn't have a bunch of one-liners and snappy stories, and he was a nice, quiet, really good guy.
Scott is definitely from the school of the soft-spoken.
Tom Watson was a big media superstar. The media thought he was going to win. The media wanted him to win.
Oh, boy.
At the 15th, Simpson drained a long putt, his 2nd straight bird.
He has holded to take the lead in the U.S. Open.
Playing 1 hole behind Simpson, Watson answered with a birdie of his own.
Yes! Within seconds of each other, Scott Simpson and Tom Watson chase each other to 2 under par.
Simpson for a birdie on 16 that would give him the lead.
Simpson, still sizzling, sank his 3rd straight.
Boy. Scott Simpson. Oh, man, what a birdie. At the age of 31, maybe on his way to the U.S. Open Championship.
For him, under those conditions at the U.S. Open, to birdie 3 holes in a row, Tom Watson looking at you.
When Watson's long putt to tie missed on the 72nd hole, Simpson was the U.S. Open champ by a stroke with his 3 under par 277.
Well, I made a lot of really good putts, and I'm just really thankful to the Lord just to be here.
1971 Marion Golf Club, Ardmore, Pennsylvania. Jack Nicklaus and Lee Trevino had battled to a tie after 72 holes.
What a birdie!
The colorful Trevino had a surprise for Jack the next day.
They got to the first tee in the playoff day, and Lee reaches in his bag, gets this rubber snake out and says, "Hey, Jack," and flips it to him. I'm sure Jack's heart flipped about 3 times, but the crowd, got a great kick out of him. Of course, Lee did too.
Trevino's practical joke might have had a carryover effect.
Jack went for the green in 2, but he's in a bunker.
Nicklaus hit into bunkers at 2 and 3 and quickly was 2 shots behind.
I says, he may be choking worse than I am.
Trevino never relinquished the lead en route to a 68. Nicklaus shot 71.
There it is, the United States Open champion, Lee Crook.
Be pretty hard pressed to find a better shot maker that is a contemporary of mine. I think he's the best shot maker in my era.
16.
Trying to watch the 86 Open was like trying to watch a 5-ring circus. It was chaos.
Coming down the stretch of that major championship, there might have been a dozen guys that could have won that tournament.
1986, Shinnecock Hills, Southampton, New York.
The young Lions lead the way.
Payne Stewart was in there, Chip Beck was in there, Randy Watkins played a great last round.
Money Watkins with a 65.
Greg Norman. Everyone was just assuming at the time that this dude's gonna whoop up on everybody.
Raymond Floyd was, already 43 years old and certainly wasn't considered a great factor for that event.
During the final round, 9 players shared the lead. At the 11th hole, Raymond Floyd launched his charge.
Lovely, slow, firm stroke.
And all of a sudden, Raymond Floyd, who just kind of was plugging along, managed to hit some great shots right at the very end. Hit a wonderful little 3rd shot to the 16th hole, the par 5.
A little beauty.
That's where mental strength and determination were so much in evidence. Raymond Floyd just simply outthought everybody else coming down the stretch, made the right shots, played to the right areas.
While the young guns fell back, the steady Floyd parred 17 and 18, finishing with a 66 and a 2-shot win. He became the oldest U.S. champion to date.
I guess patience and hard work and waiting, I guess it pays off.
1955, Olympic Club, San Francisco.
Funny things happen at Olympic, and funny things happen in 1955.
Ben Hogan was the greatest golfer in the world.
And the ball slides just below the hole.
No one has ever won 5 U.S. Opens. This would have been Hogan's 5th.
Hogan has scored a 287, and it appears that he has clinched the Open Championship for the 5th time in a glorious career.
In the locker room, Joe Dye of the USGA came up to him, and Hogan actually handed him the ball and said, "Here, Joe, this is for Golf House. Kind of stick this in the museum."
And over the transom, it keeps coming a word about somebody named Jack Fleck, who's birdieing hole after hole.
That somebody was a 32-year-old municipal course pro from Davenport, Iowa, and a tour rookie. Jack Fleck birdied 2 of the last 4 holes to catch Ben Hogan and force a playoff.
To tie the great Hogan for the title.
Fleck sees the early lead in the playoff.
After 9 holes, Hogan is 2 strokes down to Fleck.
A 20-footer on number 10 propelled Fleck into a 3-stroke lead. Hogan was down only 1 as they reached the 18th.
Hogan snap hooked his ball off the tee into the deep rough, and I saw Hogan swinging his club in that hay. What's Hogan taking all those practice swings for? Tom said, "Those aren't practice swings."
Hogan finished with a flourish, nailing a 30-footer. But it was only for double bogey, and his 72 left him 3 strokes behind Fleck. It was not a popular victory.
I don't think there's another sport where people root against the underdog.
Around Fort Worth, they called him Jack Fluke. And they hated him for beating Hogan.
1964, Congressional Country Club, Bethesda, Maryland.
brutal heat at Congressional. The 1964 U.S. Open almost killed Ken Venturi, and not surprisingly, this was the last year that they would play 36 holes in the final round.
In 1964, the U.S. Open was contested over 3 days, not 4, with 18 holes Saturday morning, 18 more that afternoon. 6 strokes behind after 36 holes, Ken Venturi persevered.
Seems to be getting hotter and more humid by the minute. 94 degrees now.
Although Venturi finished the 3rd round with a 66, heat exhaustion ate away his putting on the last 2 holes. A physician examined Venturi and permitted him to play the final 18. He was tied for 2nd.
He basically did everything wrong that day. He didn't drink any water in the morning because he was so focused on his golf. He was drinking iced tea, which was caffeinated, which is also not good.
They brought the doctor out in between the 2 rounds. The doctor said, okay, you can play. He walked around with Ken Venturi.
Wait a minute, man. You got a chance to win the U.S. Open. The doctor's going to give you permission because you got 1 iron jabbed in his neck saying, what's your answer?
Tommy Jacobs, the 54-hole leader, stumbled at the start.
Now Jacobs has to settle for a big bogey 6.
And on the 9th, Venturi, on tottering legs, surged to the front.
Makes the birdie 4. He goes into the lead, 1 stroke ahead of Jacobs.
He was quoted afterwards as saying he doesn't remember the back 9.
Venturi gutted through that final torturous day and won by 4 strokes.
Perfect example of mind over matter, where the mind took over and the mind was strong enough to get him through.
And they changed the rules. They said enough is enough. We almost killed our champion in '64, and from then on they'd play 18 holes a day.
13, 13, 13.
1939, Spring Mill Course, Philadelphia Country Club. Byron Nelson made up 5 strokes with a final round 68 and became the clubhouse leader. His fiercest rival, Sam Snead, stood on the 18th tee thinking he needed a birdie 4 to win, par 5 to tie.
Sam was misinformed about what the scores were they were in.
They did not have the communications on the course the way they do today, and Sam stood on the last tee thinking that he needed a birdie to win.
Going for the bird, Sam made a mess out of the final hole, driving in the rough, going from bunker to bunker. Then he 3-putted for a snowman triple bogey 8 after only needing a par 5 to win.
Probably the most tragic thing that ever happened to any player in any U.S. Open.
Craig Wood and Denny Shute caught Nelson, creating a 3-way playoff. Nelson birdied 18 to tie Wood and eliminate Shute.
And we got to go another 18 holes, another playoff. And in that second 18 holes, Byron Nelson said enough.
Iron Byron eagled the par 4 4th with a 215-yard 1-iron. It catapulted him to a 70 and a 3-shot triumph.
12.
Hale Irwin wasn't that popular of a golfer with the public over the years. He wore the wire rim glasses. He kind of looked like the geeky kid from the science club in your high school. By the 90s, he was wearing contacts. He was wearing some spiffier clothes.
1990, Medina Country Club, Medina, Illinois. 11 years after his second U.S. Open title, Hale Irwin had another in his grasp.
Hale Irwin was tremendous with long irons. Medina required that. He had the opportunity and the ability to go ahead and play well, but he was aging.
Not many people won in their mid-40s.
And he makes this monster putt on 18 to all of a sudden have a chance at Medina to win the Open. He did a lap around the green and started high-fiving people in the crowd. He high-fived a marshal over by a tree.
Twirling his arm in the air and the putter going, and he's blowing kisses.
And instantly, the crowd loved him because he finally showed some emotion.
Behind him was Mike Donald, a little-known player, a very good player, but not as well-known as Hale Irwin.
Mike Donald tied Irwin at 8 over 280, forcing another 18.
That is strong. It's for birdie. A little hard.
Donald led throughout the playoff, but on the 18th, leading by 1, his drive plunged into the forest. Irwin took advantage with another radar iron.
Needs to hurry. Just enough.
Even with that errant drive, Donald had a par putt to win.
Not only did this go to an 18-hole playoff, but it actually had to go to a 19th hole.
On the 19th, Irwin zeroed in on another wonderful approach.
Leaves himself a perfect uphill putt from about 8 feet.
Donald had birdie to win, but again couldn't convert. Irwin cashed his 8-footer for birdie, and at 45, passed Ray Floyd as the oldest U.S. Open champ.
You know, Mike,
gave me a chance. God bless him. I almost wish he'd have won.
11.
1972, Pebble Beach Golf Links, California.
Typical U.S. Open conditions at Pebble. Windy, golf course very firm.
Jack Nicklaus ground his way through the wind-lashed conditions, leading after every round. He held a 4-shot lead going into the final 9 holes.
It's a birdie just when he needed it most.
Nicklaus knew when to take a chance, knew when to play safe, and was in great position coming in the last 9 holes.
But on number 10, Jack hit his drive over the cliffs and onto the beach. After another errant shot, he scuffled for a double bogey. Then came a rumble like thunder. Arnie Palmer was charging.
A birdie for Arnold.
Arnold Palmer was kind of his last shot at glory. He was on the leaderboard going to the last day. It was actually he and Jack duking it out.
With Palmer on 14 and Nicklaus on 12, the tournament was in its decisive stage.
If he misses this putt and Arnold holds, Palmer will lead the Open. It's in. Now, Palmer can tie. Oh, that was close.
Palmer couldn't sustain. Nicklaus remained ahead.
He's 3 strokes in the lead once more.
And on 17 struck a shot for the ages.
The 17th hole is real flat, and so there's a real problem with depth perception. When the wind's blowing and you have to hit a 1-iron.
Lee Trevino used to say, if you get caught in a thunderstorm and thunder and lightning, hold up a 1-iron, because not even God can hit a 1-iron. Well, Jack Nicklaus could hit a 1-iron.
That 1-iron that he hit on 17 was one of those shots where everyone who was watching it went, and the man who hit it went,
Nicklaus had only inches for birdie, then cautiously 3-putted 18 for bogey 6 to win by 3 strokes. It was his 3rd of 4 U.S. Open titles.
Ten.
1966 Olympic Club, San Francisco.
Arnold Palmer was the man in golf. Everybody loved him. Billy Casper was kind of the outsider. A little overweight, didn't smile a lot. Everybody, including the golf media, were rooting for Arnie to win the Open.
Arnold Palmer breezed into the final 9 holes with a lead that looked uncatchable.
There's no way you catch Arnold Palmer if he has a 7-shot lead with 9 holes to go.
Palmer thought he had the thing won, so he now had one thing in mind, and that was to try to set a new scoring record for the U.S. Open.
Billy Casper said, Arnie, I just want to play for 2nd place, and Arnie said, I'll do what I can to help you.
Needing only a 1/36 for the record, Palmer came undone. Casper fired a birdie barrage en route to a 32 on the back 9. Casper erased that 7-shot deficit in 8 holes. Palmer had to make a 3-footer just to get into a playoff.
It was either one of the great comebacks, the great meltdowns, or maybe both in golf history.
Palmer led early in the playoff, but Casper continued to wield a magic wand. He only used 117 putts for 90 holes. Casper won his 2nd U.S. Open by 4 strokes over a crestfallen Palmer.
Palmer kind of handed it to him and gave him that opportunity, but Billy Casper certainly came through.
9.
1973 Oakmont Country Club outside Pittsburgh.
Anybody who follows golf knows Oakmont is one of the most severe tests of golf.
Johnny Miller teed off in the 3rd round, only to discover he didn't have his notebook, which was as important to him as any club.
Johnny did these meticulous yardage books. He goes out and checks the putts, checks the lines, and he left them in his other pants Saturday morning.
Unsettled, Miller was 5 over after 6 holes, then held on for a 76. After 3 rounds, he was 6 strokes back with 12 players in front of him.
There were all the other names, Weiskopf, Trevino, Palmer, Nicklaus. They were all there.
Johnny Miller was way behind, and as so often happens, somebody that's way back has nothing to lose and goes out and shoots, well, the round of his life.
Miller began his final round an hour ahead of the leaders. On the back 9, the 26-year-old exploded, making birdie at 11, 12, and 13.
It was like he had a gun in his hands because they were flying all these darts right at the flag sticks.
Arnold Palmer looked at the leaderboard and saw Miller's name. And it was like, how can that be?
His driving was precise. He missed only one fairway, and his approaches were pristine. He made 9 birds and only 1 bogey, then watched as Tom Weiskopf and John Schley, the only 2 with a chance to catch him, failed to do so.
To shoot a 63 at Oakmont on Sunday to win a United States Open, according to Johnny Miller, it's his greatest thrill in golf.
2000 Pebble Beach Golf Links, California.
It really was a poignant passing of the torch. You've got Jack Nicklaus, who's declared this is his last U.S. Open, and then you've got Tiger putting on the performance that may never be equaled.
Tiger Woods rushed to the front and steadily improved his position. He opened with a 65, and by Sunday was a disappearing dot on the horizon, up by 10.
The greens were really fast and really bumpy, which is a really bad combination. And Tiger's just banging them in all week.
Anytime and you don't miss a putt from 10 feet or less for 4 days.
I think the 2000 U.S. Open was by far the most jaw-dropping, awe-inspiring performance he's ever had in a tournament.
In the final round, Woods cruised home with a 67, finishing 12 under par. His margin of victory a record for a major.
I felt very tranquil, very peaceful inside, and for some reason, no matter what happened out there, I was able to keep my cool and my composure and focus 100% on each and every shot.
That to me is when Tiger Woods became Tiger Woods. 15-stroke win at the U.S. Open. You just don't do that.
1984 Winged Foot Golf Club, Mamaroneck, New York.
A marvelous shot by Fuzzy Zoeller under.
I was playing well. I mean, my guns were loaded. I had all 12 bullets in both guns.
In the final round, Fuzzy Zoeller, loose and loquacious, gained 5 shots and made the turn with a 3-stroke lead. But Greg Norman pulled even on the 17th.
Oh, my goodness.
Then, a familiar flameout.
I don't think he hit the worst shot of the day.
On the 18th, Norman's second shot headed for oblivion.
Unbelievable.
He's got a chance to win the U.S. Open. He blows his approach shot so far right into the grandstands. It was like watching a foul ball at a baseball game.
Norman was allowed to drop without a penalty. Back on the 18th tee, Zoeller was unaware of what had happened.
Greg Norman might well have just lost the championship.
Norman had to snake in a 45-footer just to save par.
Not bad looking putt though, is it?
Can you believe it?
Fuzzy sees him makes the putt, thinks it's a birdie, thinks he's lost.
He surrenders. That is mob.
After I saw the putt go in, I'm thinking, my God, I've just worked my butt off here, and this man's hosed, I don't know, what, 45-footers.
Even though Zoeller waved surrender, Norman's putt didn't win the U.S. Open, but it forced a playoff.
Boy, what a shot he's hit, Jim.
In the playoff, Zoeller fashioned an elegant 67, while Norman graciously suffered a crash-and-burn 75.
There's another on the beach. Returning the surrender towel of yesterday. Greg Norman said, okay.
A lot of that I learned through Jack Nicklaus. I mean, you've got to be a great winner, but you better be a great loser at the same time.
Frank Urban Zoeller, the United States Open champion for 1984.
1999, Pinehurst No. 2, North Carolina.
Payne Stewart, Phil Mickelson, Tiger Woods, Vijay Singh, the 4 of them going down the stretch. Shot for shot, I mean, any one of those 4 could have won it.
Same line as Payne's. Oh, what a shot! You're kidding me.
Payne had been playing terrific all week. But on that Sunday, it just looked like Phil was going to take over.
Phil Mickelson's wife, Amy, was back home expecting their first child. He had a plane waiting. Also waiting was Vijay Singh in the clubhouse with a chance at a playoff, along with Tiger Woods, who was playing the 18th.
He drives it, same as yesterday.
They were both 1 stroke down to Stewart and Mickelson, who were on the 17th.
This crowd is electric right now.
Wow, this could really be wild if the beeper actually goes off and Bones, his caddy, Jim Mackay, has to reach in and say, we're out of here.
I went there solely to win. I didn't want to leave Amy, go to Pinehurst, all the way across the country to do anything but win.
Hold it again.
Mickelson missed his birdie. Stewart made his.
Next to the right.
Woods missed his birdie putt to remain within one.
Agonizing.
Stewart hit an errant tee shot on the 18th and had to lay up.
In the rain, in the gloom, with Phil Mickelson standing at the edge of the green. I mean, it just had it all.
Mickelson's putt to gain a share of the lead missed, but he still had hope because Stewart was looking at a 15-footer just to save par.
Payne Stewart is the 1999 U.S. Open champion. Oh, my.
Payne Stewart then turned around to Phil Mickelson and said, don't worry about losing the U.S. Open, you're going to be a father.
In that moment of triumph, he was able to spare a thought for his fellow competitor.
Most disappointed I ever was the 99 U.S. Open. It was such an emotional roller coaster. I think that added to the letdown of not winning. I didn't obviously have the foresight to know what was going to happen a couple months later.
That October, Payne Stewart died when the Learjet he was aboard crashed.
His career was really starting to take off. He had become a champion off the course as well as on the course.
In 1960, 3 different eras came together.
You had Jack Nicklaus as an amateur threatening to win the Open. You had Ben Hogan at age 48 threatening to win his 5th Open. And then you have Palmer, the most popular player of his time.
1960, Cherry Hills Country Club outside Denver.
Arnold Palmer was 7 shots behind after the 3rd round, and he's in the locker room between rounds.
Arnold gets a challenge from his old golf writer buddy Bob Drum that, what do you think 65 will do?
He sort of arrogantly said, wouldn't do you any good, and he was a good friend. He really upset me, made me mad, and maybe that was what I needed.
First hole, a little downhill par 4, 346 yards, knocked it on the green and was able to 2-putt for a birdie, and that kind of got him going.
Thus was launched another bugle-blaring Palmer charge. To the delight of Arnie's Army, their man birdied 6 of the first 7 holes en route to a record-equaling 30 on the front 9. But Ben Hogan wasn't surrendering, and on the 17th was only a shot behind Palmer. Not, though, for long.
Hogan almost won. Just made the tiniest error with his 3rd shot to the par 5. Wound up making a really deflating bogey.
Palmer's final round 65 left him 2 up ahead of runner-up Nicklaus and cemented his lofty status.
The determination of Arnold Palmer and the go-for-broke kind of attitude really kind of cemented the image of the Arnold Palmer charge.
This was his shining moment of glory. That's how I think we all want to remember Arnold. Hitching up his pants, going out to the course, and doing something that somebody told him he couldn't do.
1913, the Country Club, Brookline, Massachusetts.
2 legends came over from Britain, Ted Ray and Harry Vardon. They were always expected to win. It was a two-horse race.
Ted Ray and Harry Vardon were the gods of golf in Britain. I mean, golf in America was really not on the map. There weren't even that many courses. Nobody played.
Francis, we met an ex-caddy from across the street from the Country Club, 20 years old, beats the 2 best British players at the time in the playoff in the U.S. Open.
With a 10-year-old caddying for him, Francis Ouimet became the first amateur to win the U.S. Open, shooting a 72 in the playoff to Harry Vardon's 77 and Ted Ray's 78.
Francis Ouimet opened the floodgates for golf's popularity here in the United States.
It put golf on the front pages for the first time. Probably the most romantic story in American golf history.
Arnold Palmer was the king of golf in 1962.
Arnold Palmer was absolutely at the height of his powers. Here was Jack Nicklaus, the challenger, who everybody just started to call Fat Jack. How dare he challenge the king?
1962, Oakmont Country Club outside Pittsburgh. 22-year-old Jack Nicklaus found himself paired with Arnold Palmer, whose hometown of Latrobe was only 40 miles away.
This was his backyard. I mean, there couldn't have been a better stage for Arnold Palmer to win a U.S. Open.
Jack had just turned professional, as a matter of fact. It was only his 17th start as a professional.
Nicklaus was so scared he started on the first day, birdie, birdie, birdie.
I mean, I had my tunnel vision on. I didn't know about Arnold Palmer or anybody else. All I was thinking about is what is Jack Nicklaus going to do at Oakmont?
Palmer took a two-stroke lead going into the final round, but Nicklaus closed with a 69. When Palmer missed a birdie putt at 18, Arnie's Army had to reassemble for a playoff.
They introduced Arnold. He was first to hit, the ultimate hero. And the long build-up and down the center of the fairway, he launched this drive. Crushed it. Jack got up there, you know, and they introduced him booze.
It was something that only motivated him, only pressed his button a little bit harder.
Launched this ball, carried Arnold by 20, 25 yards, and right then, the game was over.
Nicklaus leaped to a four-stroke lead in the first 6 holes on his way to 71 and a 3-shot win. Palmer, who 3-putted 10 times over 90 holes, was distraught.
It was in front of my folks in my hometown, and it hurt.
Two.
1950, Marion Golf Club, Ardmore, Pennsylvania. Ben Hogan was in pursuit of another U.S. Open title just 16 months after his legs were shattered when a bus hit his car in a head-on collision. That was a triumph in itself.
Nobody really thought that he would be able, for his comeback at the Open, to be able to walk the 72 holes.
His legs at Marion were wrapped. He was in enormous pain.
Somehow, Bantam Ben managed to walk 36 holes the final day, lost the lead, regained a share of it on the 72nd hole, and created a 3-way playoff with George Fazio and Lloyd Mangrum.
He still had to soak his legs because, you know, naturally he would get swelling. I did not think he'd be able to play.
Hogan's 1/69 beat Mangrum by 4, Fazio by 6, and was his second U.S. Open, with 2 more to follow.
You run over by a bus on your way home from Phoenix in your Cadillac, and a year later you're winning the U.S. Open.
That was probably one of the greatest comebacks in the 20th century, because this man was given up for dead.
1982, Pebble Beach Golf Links, California.
What you have to have is not only dramatic golf, but compelling characters. And certainly at that time, there were very few more compelling characters than Watson and Nicklaus.
Jack Nicklaus was gunning for a record 5th U.S. Open, while Tom Watson was in pursuit of his first, as well as his just due.
Even though Watson had won Masters and he had won British Opens, there was a sense that until he got the U.S. Open on his resume, that it wasn't complete.
The day really was a day of my putter. When you have that feeling with your putter, you feel, you know, it takes the pressure off the rest of your game.
Knocked 2 feet back. Look at here.
Nicklaus 2 years earlier had won an Open and a PGA, had somewhat reestablished himself.
Another fine shot.
You never know with Jack. The last round there, he had 5 birdies on that front 9. He's right smack in it.
Nicklaus closed with a 69, and when Watson bogeyed the 16th, the two were tied for the lead. Then at the par 3 17th, Watson's tee ball landed in jail.
The whole tournament was coming down to the last couple of holes, and he hit it in a spot that is very, very difficult to recover from. Ball was sitting in deep grass, but at least I could get the club head underneath it. Didn't take long to judge the shot. I knew it broke right. I take the sandwich out of the bag. Bruce says, get it close. I said, get it close, hell, I'm going to sink it.
That was such a hard shot because he's coming out of the rough and a very slick green going downhill away from him.
For frosting, there was this birdie putt at the 18th.
Do you believe it? What can you say? Tom Watson pitching into the hole for a birdie has taken the lead in the U.S. Open. One more par and he's finally won it.
Turned around, looked at Bruce, and I said, see, I told you I was going to sink it.
wins it by 2 from the greatest golfer of them all, Jack Nicklaus.
The chip in on 17 because of the venue, Pebble Beach. People involved, Nicklaus and Watson, the tournament, the U.S. Open, has to go down as possibly the greatest shot in the history of golf.
Watson gave up that year on trying to be perfect and instead concentrated on being clutch.
His first U.S. Open. Happy Father's Day, Tom Watson.
You know, they say you don't win the U.S. Open, the Open wins you, which means it comes down to fate. And just to throw fate to the wind, we hand our list over to our second guessers, those specialists in Shanks, Slices, the Junkies. 4 sports-loving radio talk show hosts from D.C. and Baltimore who have never met a 3-jack they didn't like.
All right, we've got the list here of the best U.S. Opens, and I love this list because I think it stinks. Right. At number 8, you've got Tiger Woods in 2000 when he won by 15 strokes. How can that not be number 1, the most dominating performance
I'll tell you why.
in U.S. Open history?
How about you like the field? Yeah,
Okay.
how about no drama? Right. To me, something that's up at the top should be something that's close. It shouldn't be on the list at all.
How about he had a defining 4 rounds? Nobody has ever been that dominant in a major.
But in U.S. Opens, I mean, USGA tries to make the course so difficult. You just don't do that.
He laughed at it.
And especially at Pebble Beach. I mean, you just...
Who finished in second place?
Don't know.
Who finished in third?
Who knows?
That's my point. That's why it shouldn't be on the list.
Because he won by 15. That's why you don't remember who finished.
The point is he dominated the best players in the world.
Number 1 on the list, I think, is perfect. It's Tom Watson in 1982. Who finished in second? How about Jack Nicklaus?
Pretty good leaderboard.
How about a defining shot? How about one of the greatest golf shots ever on number 17?
All right, how about last year? Michael Campbell from New Zealand wins the 2005 U.S. Open at Pinehurst, and he was being chased down by monsters. Right. Tiger, Vijay, Goosen, guys who've won these tournaments before.
You know why it's not on the list? Because I have a better Q rating than Michael Campbell. Nobody knows who that guy is.
Don't you root for the underdog? I think that's a great story.
But I think it is big because of the field, which brings me to number 6 on this list, Payne Stewart winning it in 1999. He had Phil Mickelson right behind him. Everybody was just waiting. Phil Mickelson, the greatest player not to win a major. Plus Tiger and Vijay.
Right. Payne Stewart, the only guy to finish under par in that tournament. But I think even bigger than that is when he actually won it, and then you remember him embracing Phil Mickelson. But says, look, you're going to be a dad. It's way more important than winning the U.S. Open. Tragically, Payne Stewart killed a few months later in the plane crash. So that's what I remember from that U.S. Open.
You know, number 3, before our time, 1962, Jack Nicklaus wins it. This was his first win. This was his defining moment. He was 22 years old, also beat one of the greatest players of all time in Arnold Palmer in a playoff.
Right, the beginning of the 18 majors. And you know, we weren't old enough to see it, but we've all seen the highlights of Ken Venturi winning the '64 U.S. Open at Congressional. Right. It was like brutally hot. I mean,
it's too much hype. It's golf. He's walking. Right. Okay, it was hot. Right. He walked 36 holes. Isn't that part of the deal?
He almost died on the course.
He was exhausted.
Yeah, exactly.
He ramped up.
Drink some water. Keep yourself hydrated.
So let's recap this list. You love the guy that won by 15 strokes, and you love the guy who walked for 36 holes.
The guy
who was hot.
I like the guy that was Tucker.
Pretty high standard,
I don't have a problem with either one.
All right, that's the best U.S. Opens.
Now that the second guessers have had their say, it's time to see how you, the fan, voted on Sports Nation on ESPN.com for the best U.S. Opens of all time. Number 5, 1960, Arnold Palmer. Number 4, 1962, Jack Nicklaus. Number 3, 1982, Tom Watson. Number 2, 1999, Payne Stewart. Number 1, 2000, Tiger Woods. So that's it for this edition of Who's Number 1. I'm Trey Wingo, and thanks for joining us for ESPN Classics ranking of the 20 best U.S. Opens. We will be back to continue our countdown of the teams, the athletes, and the events that have shaped our world of sports. Until then, let the debating begin.